Have you ever looked out at a Canadian landscape with its vast forests, sparkling lakes, and sprawling cities, and wondered what it was like millions of years ago? I mean, way, way back. Today, we're journeying back in time, not just thousands, but over 2.5 million years, to explore Canada during the very first ice age. It's a story of colossal ice sheets, incredible creatures, and a landscape so alien it is hard to imagine it is the same place we call home. So, let's set the stage. The period we're talking about is called the Pleistocene epoch. This wasn't just one long, continuous deep freeze. It was actually a series of glacial periods, or ice ages, punctuated by warmer interglacial periods. The very first of these, the pre-NLOTN, began around 2.6 million years ago. At that time, the Earth's climate began a long, slow cooling trend. Subtle shifts in Earth's orbit, known as Milankovitch cycles, reduced the amount of solar radiation reaching the northern latitudes. This meant cooler summers, where the snow that fell in winter didn't completely melt away. Year after year, century after century, the snow accumulated, compressing under its own immense weight, until it transformed into dense glacial ice. And this wasn't just a bit of ice. Imagine an ice sheet. The Laurentide ice sheet centered over what is now Hudson Bay. It grew and grew, eventually covering almost all of Canada and stretching deep into the northern United States. At its thickest, this ice sheet was over 3 kilometers high. Think about that for a second. 3 kilometers of solid ice. That's taller than any mountain in the Canadian Rockies. The sheer weight of this ice was so immense that it literally pushed down the Earth's crust, depressing the land beneath it by hundreds of meters. The Canada we know was buried, completely reshaped by this moving, grinding, and sculpting force of nature. Underneath this colossal ice sheet, the landscape was being fundamentally altered. As the glaciers advanced, they acted like giant bulldozers, scraping away soil, carving out valleys, and grinding solid rock into dust. They plucked massive boulders from one area and carried them for hundreds of kilometers, dropping them in completely different places when the ice eventually retreated. These are the erratics that geologists find today, silent witnesses to the power of the ice. The Great Lakes, for example, owe their existence to the glaciers. They started as ancient river valleys that were deepened and widened by the scouring action of the ice sheets. When the ice finally melted, these massive basins filled with water, creating the freshwater seas we know today. But what about life? It's easy to assume that a land buried under kilometers of ice would be completely lifeless. And for the most part, right under the ice sheet, it was. However, the Ice Age wasn't a constant deep freeze. There were warmer periods, the interglacials, where the ice would retreat significantly. During these times, life would return, and Canada would become a very different, but still vibrant, place. Also, there were areas that remained ice-free, known as refugia. The most famous of these is the Beringia Land Bridge, a vast subcontinent that connected Siberia and Alaska. Parts of the Yukon and the Northwest Territories were also part of this ice-free corridor. This region was not a lush paradise. It was a cold, dry, wind-swept steppe tundra. But it was teeming with life. This was the age of megafauna, giant mammals that were perfectly adapted to the cold. Picture this: herds of woolly mammoths, their long curved tusks used to sweep away snow to find frozen grasses. These weren't just elephants with fur, they were icons of the Ice Age. Alongside them were the mastodons, their stockier, more forest-dwelling cousins. And roaming the plains were giant short-faced bears, one of the largest mammalian land carnivores ever. These bears were taller than a polar bear when standing on their hind legs and had long legs built for running down prey. There were also massive ground sloths, slow-moving herbivores that could stand on their hind legs to reach high branches. And formidable saber-toothed cats like Smilodon with their infamous canine teeth. Herds of ancient bison, larger than their modern descendants, and wild horses, which were native to North America before going extinct and being reintroduced by Europeans, also populated this landscape. The oceans were different too. With so much of the world's water locked up in ice sheets, global sea levels were as much as 120 meters lower than they are today. Species like walruses, belugas, and bowhead whales, which are now confined to the Arctic, would have had a much larger range, following the edge of the sea ice far south of their current habitats. So, how do we know all of this? The evidence is literally written in the land. Geologists study glacial till, the mix of clay, sand, and rock left behind by melting glaciers. They analyze the long scratches or striations carved into bedrock, which showed the direction the ice was moving. The thousands of lakes that dot the Canadian Shield were carved out by ice. The routes of our rivers were dictated by the meltwater from the retreating sheets. Even the distribution of plants and animals today is a legacy of where they could survive during the glacial periods and how they recolonized the land afterward. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the history of our amazing world. Let me know in the comments which Ice Age creature you'd most like to see. See you next time.